Hi, and welcome to another episode of Ask on CYC. So the Bible says to us, do not fear 365 times every single day of the whole year. But we still have fear. And tonight we're going to cover the fear of flying. It's actually very ironical that we're here to talk about the fear of flying and how to overcome it, which in just a few hours ago, a plane out of Egypt on the way to Paris actually crashed. But we're not only going to talk about the fear of flying, we're also going to give you tips and tricks behind traveling to make things easier for you for your next travel. So I'd like to introduce you to my guest on tonight's show. We actually have with us an aeronautical engineer. We have with us Peter Ghobrial. Welcome to the show, Peter.
Hi, Amina. Thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure having you on the show.
It's a pleasure being here.
So let's get the audience familiar with who you are and what do you do for work.
Okay, so I studied aerospace engineering at New South Wales Uni. And I now work in an airline as an aircraft performance engineer. That just entails that we sort of dictate how the airplane flies on takeoff and on a journey. So how fast you're going on a runway, how heavy you can be on a runway, just to make sure that everything is pretty safe. Should you have any unforeseen circumstances happen, then there's always an exit strategy out for the pilots to use. So.
And you're also a frequent traveller, so you know the tips and tricks behind flying because of your frequent travels, yeah?
Yeah, I've become used to them, I suppose, if you'd like, yeah. So
okay, so just a reminder to our audience, if you have a question that you want to ask Peter tonight, you have a trip coming up and you want the tips and tricks behind in your travels, give us a call or send us a text on 0416 551 292. Ask your question through a text or give us a call and speak to Peter live on tonight's show and get your question answered. So Peter, let's get into it. Let's move on to our first question.
Okay. So
in the past, planes were rarely used. Using ships was probably the most frequent method of traveling.
Mm-hmm.
But now flying has become the most accessible and obviously the most cheapest method of traveling. So would you say that there are more people flying now than ever, and is the economy seats becoming smaller to accommodate for this vast amount of people who are travelling now?
Look, definitely there are more people flying. Airfares are getting cheaper. There's more competition in the market, so that's a given. As for economy seats getting smaller, I wouldn't say necessarily the seats are getting smaller. It's more as demand increases, airlines will put a lot more frequency on a certain route. However, having said that, if you were to compare, for example, an Asian airliner, Asians are generally smaller in stature to Western men or women. So you'll usually find that in those Asian airlines, the seats are smaller than what you would compare, for example, as an airline out of the USA, for example, where generally they're a bit bigger than the average adult.
I've actually read an article, please correct me or how true this is, but I'm not going to mention the name of the plane, but in 1960, the distance between the chair in front of you and your seat was about 91 centimetres. Now, 1980 onwards, the chair has become 71 centimetres.
That's true, yeah. You can get different varied pitches of the seats, and it all, again, just depends on the demand. There's also the destination you're going to. A lot of vacation, like places like Hawaii or islands or whatever, it's just people are going in there, it's not about luxury and whatnot, but the premium airlines do tend to keep their seats a bit bigger and further spaced apart. Having said that, however, the actual seat, you'll notice if you compare an older version to a newer one, it's a really thin and narrow seat, really light fabrics. So they do want to keep the passengers as comfortable as they can so they can fly the airline back again. Otherwise, if you get bored of your seat or tired of it, you're just not going to fly that airline again. So,
sure.
Yeah.
Now that there are more people travelling, and obviously there's going to be a lot of competition between airfares, and there are times where there are not much people travelling, and the prices will be expensive. So when's the best time, or how far back should one start looking to purchase tickets in order to get a good deal?
Look, my general rule is as soon as you know you're going, just book, because there's this notion that the longer you leave it, or the closer you get to the date, that the tickets will suddenly drop in price. With technology now, everyone's available to book at any time of day, and people usually do leave their ticket booking to a very late stage. So that doesn't really affect the prices anymore, because airlines know the cycles. They know the peak season, they know the off-peak season. So it's really, as soon as you know you can go, just book your ticket, because that's, the earlier the better, I'll say.
Okay. So one question behind maybe a tip that you can give us: should a person go to a specific site to look for fares, or should they go to sites with different varieties of airliners?
Go to both. Go to every site you can try, because sometimes, for example, a travel website, they buy a particular amount of seats from an airline, whereas an airline on its own website would sell its seats. So it just really depends. If the airline has sold most of its seats, prices generally be a bit higher. If the travel website, for example, any website needs to sell the seats, they would sort of drop the prices a bit more. And you can find it vice versa as well. The airline itself might not have sold that many seats. So just try both. Try the actual airline and the booking website, whatever one you use. And you'll be surprised, because you can save a lot of money through that.
Okay, I was with someone actually earlier today, and we were actually talking about Skyscanner, and they were asking me about my recommendation. And I know you're a frequent user of Skyscanner. What's your opinion on Skyscanner?
Yeah, I use it. I think it's good. It does give you a lot of competition. The prices are generally the cheapest I found. Having said that, I've been to an airline website where it's beaten Skyscanner, and it's for that very reason, that the airline needs to sell its particular allotment of seats.
Sure.
But yeah, it's down to you and sort of how deep you can look.
Okay.
But yeah, by all means, use what you can. All the resources are there for you. So.
Yeah, so one shouldn't limit himself to one website.
Definitely not, because you could find a bargain somewhere else. So. And don't be afraid to call up your travel agent if you have one. Just say, look, this is the cheapest I've found. Can you beat them?
Sure.
Yeah. So.
Okay. So I want to talk more about the aesthetics of a plane and what happens in the plane. So they always tell us to switch off our electronic devices during takeoff and during landing. Why do they do that?
Okay, this has been, I suppose, it's been a very long, ongoing debate. It pretty much comes down to the aviation industry itself is a very, very cautious industry. It's very safe industry. So if anything was to go on a plane, all the instruments, for example, they have to guarantee their safety. They have to make sure everything works properly and doesn't cause any sort of interference to the airplanes. Now, they haven't actually been able to prove that mobile phones can interfere with an airplane. So it's for that very reason that they can't disprove it, if you like. They say, okay, well, it's actually better not, just don't risk it at all. There's a lot of people that think it's because of the electronic magnetic field from devices, but that's not true, because...
So if I didn't listen to the flight attendant and I kept my phone in normal mode, what would happen to the plane?
I'd probably say nothing. You'd be all right. I wouldn't recommend it.
So it's just a precaution.
It's a precaution. It's better to be safe than sorry. And again, having your phone switched on gives you the opportunity to actually look at the flight attendant, the pre-flight video, the safety demonstration. Because God forbid if something should happen, then at least you know how to evacuate and what to do in an evacuation, for example. So it's a good way to get your attention, or to ensure your attention as well.
Sure. Actually got a couple of questions that came in from the audience member. One of the first questions asking, I'm not sure how you're going to answer this or how you want to answer this. They're asking, are there any specific airliners we should avoid? And there's a follow-up question that says, is there any safety risk in choosing cheaper airliners?
I'll tell you off air which ones you'd avoid, but just as a general rule, try to pick an airline based on its reputation. Based on, just do a Google search, for example, based the safety records of the airline. Does it always tend to have, breakdowns, mid-air diversions? Is there a prolonged record of, for example, God forbid, accidents or something like that? So definitely look at the airline's background and not just the price of the ticket. Because a lot of people do go for price, especially overseas. Like Australian airlines are, very strictly governed. However, we're a very small nation in comparison to the world. So just do the research on the airline, and as long as you're comfortable with it, that's
So
the right
would
airline.
it be more specifically on local flights in maybe, let's say, in other countries like Europe or in America? There's internal flights where they use really small planes?
No, the size of the airplane doesn't matter because they're all governed and they all have their own, safety sort of standards, if you'd like. It's more about the airline itself, how they operate, where their maintenance goes, how the pilots are trained, how their engineers are trained. So it's just the culture within the airline. It's as long as you go with a reputable airline, and you're right. Yeah.
Okay. Just a reminder to our viewers, if you want to send in a question, the number is 0416 551 292. Send us a text. If you're about to travel soon and you want some tips, you want a trick, you want to avoid something, you want to find cheaper costs, give us a call, speak to Peter tonight, or send us a text and we'll answer it for you on the live show tonight. So moving on to our next question. I've read this in the article, but I don't know how true it is, and I want to get your opinion on it. So I'm going to talk about flight paths now. Mm-hmm. So do certain airliners avoid flight path over Syria or Libya because of the belief that ISIS is based there?
Yes, it's true. Not directly because of ISIS. I mean, they're involved, obviously. But airlines have a duty of care to their passengers and their employees as well. So for places like Iraq and Syria where there's fighting, where there's military aircraft flying in the airspace, most airlines see that as a danger or perceive it as a hazard. So most of them do actually divert or reroute their aircraft around Iraq and Syria. And it's just to avoid any conflict or any possible conflict with a military jet that
okay.
for some reason thinks it's unidentified aircraft.
So not just those couple of countries, any country that could be war driven.
Yep.
The airliners would avoid flying down that path.
Yeah. Anywhere where there's a war, generally, airlines stay clear of it. There are obviously airlines that go into Syria.
Sure.
They can't help it.
Okay. We actually got another question that just came in from the audience. They're asking, since 9/11 there's been random explosive testing, but I've noticed that these are sequential, not random. For example, if you wait till the person is busy, you can walk straight past. This seems counterintuitive. What is your opinion?
I assume they're talking about the airport after the security clearance.
Yeah, you know when you go through customs and they randomly select you. Is it really random? I think that's what the audience.
Look, it is. It is random. They've got a quota of people they need to screen. It's just who they feel. I mean, I'm not obviously trained in airport security and whatnot, but it is random. Some people may feel that they randomly get selected all the time, but it's better to be safe. I'd rather be checked 1,000 times than have an incident happen to anyone.
It's funny that this question got asked not too long ago. Me and my family and my uncle's family, our surname is Ibrahim, by the way, and there were 9 of us that were Ibrahims. 7 out of the 9 of us was randomly selected.
I'll check you as well. I'll definitely check you.
So that made me question that day whether it was random.
It's just down to suspicion. If you look suspicious, doesn't matter how many times you go through that gate a week, you'll get tested. It's just if you look nervous, if you look like you're a nervous flyer, they'll test you.
Sure. Let's move on to how airplanes can fly themselves. Mm-hmm. Is it necessary to still have a pilot on board?
Yeah, of course. I've had a lot of people ask me that question. If the airplanes can fly themselves, why do we need a pilot? And the short and simple answer to that is that no matter how much you can program a computer to do something, there still needs to be that human interaction, that human brain to decide, okay, is this actually right or is this wrong? Pilots are very highly trained people, and they know decisions that they take to come out of years of training. And so not just down to, yes, you can pretty much trust the airplane, but there are certain times when something goes wrong or something may appear not to be going wrong, but in fact it is. You need that human interaction with the aircraft to rectify the situation and to dictate what's their next course of action. So definitely, and I wouldn't go on an airplane with just nobody in charge. So
yeah, I've read that. I've read that they also put humans behind the airplane is because for the psychology of the passengers, they feel more reassured knowing that there's a human operating the.
I haven't read that, but yeah. I mean, It's just
You
human
set
nature.
up yourself. You're the
Yeah,
more
I
comfortable having a human there.
Of course, yeah.
And you're an aerospace engineer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wouldn't fly in an unmanned aircraft. So.
That's very interesting. So leading up to that, how much of the flight is actually controlled by the pilot himself?
Surprisingly, not a lot by the pilot. I mean, when I say controlled, or when you say controlled, I mean the aircraft action is on autopilot, but the pilots spend a long time before takeoff. They get on board, they check all the systems, they input all the coordinates, or the flight path is given to them. So pretty much pilots, I mean, they do a lot. It's just the actual flying is pretty much the takeoff until you hit cruise, then they switch autopilot, and then as you're coming to landing, that's when they pick it up again. But during the cruise phase, it's all on autopilot, but it's not to say the pilots aren't doing the work, because they do a lot behind an autopilot. So
That's very interesting. So we're going to go for a quick break, and when we come back, we'll continue our discussion, and we'll get into the more fun stuff and the more tips and tricks side of this.
Yeah.
Just a reminder to our audience members. So coming up, we're going to get into the more tips and tricks behind traveling. So if you have any questions, please send your questions to 0416 551 292. Start sending your questions in through now. So by the time when we come back from the break, we'll have your questions prepared and ready to be answered. Thank you.
CYC, Christian Youth Channel.
Hi, welcome back to Ask on CYC. On tonight's episode, we're talking about the fear of flying and how to overcome it, and also tips and tricks behind traveling. So we have with us an aeronautical engineer here to give us his opinion on little tips and tricks in traveling. So if you have any questions, or you're planning a trip very soon and you want a tip, give us a call or speak to him and send in your question to 0416 551 292. So we actually got a question that just came in while we were on break, and the question is saying, how dangerous are birds to jet engines?
Good question. They are dangerous. Generally, jet engines, when they go testing, they fire a frozen chicken. It sounds funny, but they actually get a cannon and they hurl a frozen chicken at an engine going full speed.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's actually designed, the blades are designed to withstand a certain force, impact force. Having said that, birds will fly in flocks, so there have been circumstances where a whole flock has gone into an engine, damaged it. And I think in New York, a few years back, maybe close to 7 or 8 years ago, American Airlines flew straight through a flock of birds and had to land in the Hudson River without any engines because both of them shut down. But part of our work is to ensure that should an aircraft have an engine failure due to anything, a bird strike, for example, then the airplane obviously can continue flying. So it's safe to fly in one engine, any aircraft, the twin, obviously. And it's also now, like, airports will report any bird activity around a certain airport, and they'll just warn the pilots as they're approaching, or even taking off.
Oh, well, this is very serious.
And it is. You'll even see sometimes aircraft, when they come to land, they'll have like a flashing light on each wing, and you'll just see them both flashing, and that's pretty much to deter the birds. Somehow it distracts them and clears the way. So
okay, that's very
they're a hazard. So.
Wow, I did not know that. So my next question is a very serious one, because we live here in Australia, and for us to get to anywhere in the world, it takes us, for example, Egypt, it takes us almost 20 hours, including a stopover. How can we endure these long flights?
Okay. Long flights, yeah, I understand that we're very far away, but we can't help it. So pretty much what I would do is the day before, or even a couple of days, get your proper sleep, drink a lot of water. It's very, very important because the aircraft cabin is very, very dry air. It's not good for you at all, prolonged anyway, like health-wise, but I mean, it's obviously safe. But just make sure you get your water intake. The day of your flight, go for a run, do a bit of physical activity, get yourself tired. I as well wear compression skins. But apart from that, it's just, ensure when you're on board the airplane that you drink a lot of water. They say about 1 litre an hour, which is a lot. So you need to pick your seat properly. And I think that's really important. Picking a seat, especially for a long flight, can make or break your whole experience. And And again, it's all, you're going on a holiday, so it should be fun, you know. So I hear a lot of people say, oh, I'm just going to stay up so I can sleep on an airplane. But the danger in that is that what happens if you can't sleep on an airplane for some reason? You walk through airports all groggy and tired, and you just start off the vacation on a very negative sort of, you know, you don't feel that great. So definitely get a lot of rest, drink a lot of water, just watch a lot of movies on board, and
just
walk
get
around.
your mind off things.
Yeah, get your mind off things. Sometimes you can even plan your trip. So if you're going, you know, somewhere far, like you said, Egypt, on board they'll have like a destination guide where you can see what I mean, you'd obviously know Egypt, but someone who doesn't, you can see what the local attractions are, where to go, and I just get a pen or my phone and just, you know, plan my trip. And
yeah. So for one who's, you know, always needs to go to the bathroom, is to plan their seat, aisle seat, and close to the bathroom. Yeah.
I'll say yes, not close to the bathroom, because the danger in close to the bathroom is that you have a lot of people using the bathroom, and generally, if you're out actually trying to sleep, you have a lot of people knock you out, like just bump into you when you're sleeping. It's very uncomfortable. So my tip is stay away from bathrooms. Try to get an aisle seat, or even better, an emergency exit seat where you've got a lot of leg space.
How can one get an emergency exit seat?
Ask politely at the counter when you check in, and just ask. You know, it doesn't hurt to ask. These people see thousands of customers a day. So just be courteous to them, be nice, and
it was only one time where they asked me, "Would you like an exit row seat?" And I said, "Yeah, of course." And I loved it ever since. And every time I went to ask for it, they always said to me, "No."
You never know. You could ask, especially if the plane's empty.
Yeah.
If they see you're capable of, you know, assisting the flight attendants should something go wrong, then I see why they wouldn't give it to you.
So the next big thing that ruins everyone, especially when they get back to their country, is jet lag. How can we avoid jet lag?
Yeah, so you can't actually avoid jet lag.
Or reduce it at least.
You can do things to help reduce jet lag. And the term jet lag itself is based on your circadian rhythm, which is your internal body clock, lagging the time zone you're in, and that's why they call it jet lag. And it pretty much, again, you make sure you drink a lot of water. Don't have a coffee on board. Don't have alcohol on board. And not just because coffee can keep you awake, but it's also dehydrating you. Same with alcohol. Not only that, because the cabin altitude is not actually ground level altitude, so your taste buds are a bit numbed. So airline food, to compensate for that, do use a lot of sodium or salt in their food. So if you're just constantly eating all this salt, you're dehydrating yourself. So make sure you drink a lot of water. And it's also it's jet lag. It's different because when you travel east, for example, so you're traveling from Sydney to LA, for example, or even worse, New York. Your body, your day is a lot longer, because if you were to leave, for example, 12 o'clock tomorrow morning or tomorrow midday, you'd actually get to New York around about the same time, on a Friday. So you'll get there with your Sydney time, your internal clock think it's nighttime, but it's actually daytime. So you've got to endure a whole day before you try to get to sleep.
Yeah.
And a good thing is that when you get there, go out straight into the sunlight, because when your eyes pick up the sunlight, it sends a signal to your brain saying, hang on, it's still day. You'll be really tired. If you need to sleep, max 30 minutes until you can hit nighttime, and then just try to get your body acclimatized quickly, and eat very light foods when you get there. Because the worst thing you can do is when your body thinks it's late at night, it's actually daytime, worst thing you can do is slam down a kebab or a pizza, because it doesn't help at all. You just feel more bloated, worse. So just eat really clean for a day or so. And again, water.
Okay.
Water's your friend.
I like those tips. I'll definitely try that next time.
Yeah, let me know.
So let's talk about our feet and how they swell on the planes. Why do they swell?
Without going into too much medical terms, because I'm not really a medic, but
what's happening in the plane to cause your feet to swell?
It's just your constant sitting down. It's pretty much it. You're not moving your feet. The blood pools to the bottom of your feet. Just gravity pulls it down. So it's
Does the cabin pressure play a part in this at all?
Not really.
It's just lack of movement.
It's just lack of movement, because if you were to sit down somewhere long enough in one spot, you'd have the same problem. So, airlines do give you flexing or stretching charts. So it's just about moving your feet, just getting the blood flow through legs back
Yeah.
up to your body and just get up and walk. Yeah.
Yeah,
Go for a walk up and down the airplane.
I see people all the time doing laps up
Yeah,
and down the airline.
yeah. It's you know, it's good for you because the worst thing you can do is get to your destination. It's happened to me as well, with a swollen ankle, swollen foot, and it's really painful. It ruins your day, ruins a couple of days. So
Sure.
yeah.
Okay. We just actually got a couple of questions that came in from the audience. The first question is, can planes crash mid-air?
Yes, they can. Yes,
It's
the short
very-
answer to that is yes, they can.
I don't know where they're going with this question, but what do they mean by crash? As in crash into another plane or crash into a building?
I mean, the short answer to that is yes. Why? Look, planes are generally very, very safe. There's usually what we call in the aviation industry a Swiss cheese theory, where every hole down the track of an accident, when you go backwards, there has to be a lot of things that happen for the crash to happen. So it's not just one thing that can directly cause a crash, apart from human input, obviously, but just the mechanisms of an airline. There's a lot of blocks to prevent one action cascading down into a crash later on. Yeah, planes can crash.
What's that fact? Please remind me because I forgot about it. That you're less likely to die in a plane than die on a.
You're more likely to die of a donkey than an airplane, and it's a stat. And
That's that. Okay.
yeah, I mean, you risk your life every day on the road, and it's more dangerous to drive your car to and from the airport than it is to fly to Europe or whatever. So planes are very safe.
Okay, that's good to know.
Yeah, they are.
So the next question that just came in, what's the difference between fly-by-wire and fly-by-cable? Why do some airlines choose one over the other?
I believe it's fly-by-wire and just a cable mechanism. So what if you just take just a very simple example? The pilot has a control column. If he steers left, for example, on a cable system, the column is directly linked to the control surfaces on the wings that control the airplane. So it's using motors, it's using cable systems, it's using actuators to move the control surfaces to turn the plane. Fly-by-wire is new technology. It's been around for a while, but it's recently new, and most airplanes now have fly-by-wire, where it's pretty much the control column it's like a computer game, for example. You turn left, it sends an electronic signal, to the control surfaces directly on the wing, and then those motors then change accordingly. So there's no mechanical link between the control column and the control surface, if you like, and that's the technology behind fly-by-wire, and it just saves on weight. And if you look at all the metal cables or links and rods and whatnot, it's good technology. It's all computerized, really. So
Okay.
that's the difference.
All right. So moving back onto tips and tricks. Airport transfers, especially if we're doing long flights, there's a great chance that we'll be doing airport transfers. So what time do we need to give ourselves between transferring from one flight to another flight?
I'd say easily a couple of hours. Again, just to be comfortable. Last thing you want to do is be rushing, jumping off an airplane to try to make another flight, for example. So give yourself a couple of hours, because the minute you land at an airport, it could take up to half an hour before you actually get off the airplane, and then another 10-15 minutes to find your new gate.
Do we need to grab our checked-in luggage, or does that go direct to our destination?
Generally, if you've bought a ticket direct, two boarding passes direct to your final destination, the airline in Sydney or wherever you're leaving from will check you into both flights. So you wouldn't need to pick up your luggage, just go straight to your new gate. If, however, you bought your own tickets, say you're going to Egypt via Dubai, for example, if you bought an airplane ticket to Dubai and then a separate one to Egypt, you'll need to get out of Dubai, collect your bag, go back in through, check in the system properly to Egypt, and then...
Sure.
Yeah, but...
Okay, so you say roughly a couple of hours just to be safe?
At least a couple of hours, yeah. But
least,
if both your tickets that you bought yourself are with the same airline, you can request to get checked in from Sydney on both flights, and they'll forward your bags straight away.
All right. We actually got a caller that just called in. So welcome, caller. Welcome to Ask. Please ask your question.
Hi. I just want to ask a question in regard to the black boxes on the airplane.
Yeah.
So it seems like a few times there's been trouble finding the black boxes, which is key to figuring out, what the cause to the crash of an airline was. So why do we have to keep them on black boxes inside planes? Why can't we send them back to send it back to a base or something, mid-flight, so we've got a secondary copy that wasn't on the plane that crashed?
It's a good question.
Thank you, caller, for your question.
Yeah, it's a very good question.
Thanks.
So the aircraft itself, the black box has a very limited battery life in terms of how long it can send a signal out to. And that's usually based on the fact that just historically they've been able to find the crash site within a certain number of times, a certain number of days. And I believe it could be 30, I could be wrong, it could be up to 60 days battery life. Why don't they send direct signals to the ground? They do. Aircraft does send signals directly to the ground, but they're not like a black box signal, because the black box has the voice recordings. Obviously, you could see why an airplane crashed from the signals we get, from the data we receive. And I look at quite a lot of airplane data, but you don't know what the transcript's happening, what the pilot is saying. If there's somebody, God forbid, came into the cockpit, for example, you need that data, and unfortunately that's only stored on the black box, it's the voice recording.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's a good question.
Yeah. All right, so we've got another question that just came in from an audience member. They're asking, how true are the stories and findings on the show Air Crash Investigations?
It's true. It's very true. They're based on true facts. Obviously, facts that have been published and released by the ATSB, Australian Transport Safety Bureau, or the NTSB, the National Transport Safety Bureau, the American version. So yeah, they pretty much get the official report, and then they sort of reenact that into a show.
But they add some, Hollywood techniques to make the show interesting.
They do. They dramatize it, but generally the underlying story is it's very accurate. It's as to the report.
Okay.
Yeah.
So on that topic, why does turbulence occur?
Okay. So turbulence occurs for many reasons. If you think of the Earth, just think of the atmosphere as invisible rivers of air. These rivers are like currents. Just the air is flowing around and around the world, or the globe. Aircrafts try to use that to their advantage. They try to pick up a tailwind. And obviously it's not a smooth transition, so as they're going into that stream, if you like, as being pushed along to that stream, or if they're flying the other way, headwind into the stream, it's not a very steady stream, and it causes a lot of turbulence. That could be a cause. Another cause could be storms. So when a storm cloud, when the vapor condenses into water droplets, it releases a bit of heat. If you get enough heat, you get a hot current flowing upwards, and again, you might feel the airplane suddenly rise or suddenly drop, and it's just the difference in pressures in the air. You could also get it from mountain ranges. You'll see a lot of mountain ranges do cause a lot of turbulence. It's just the air flowing and just getting deflected upwards.
Okay, but nothing to be scared of, yeah?
No, airplanes are designed, you'd be surprised how much an airplane wing can flex. Like you look out the window in turbulence and you see the thing shaking around, but it's nothing to what it is designed to do. And it's planes, and especially pilots, are trained to go through turbulence, they're trained to deal with turbulence. And it's only really just an inconvenience more than a hazard.
Okay. Hold that thought, because we actually got another phone call that's come in. So okay. Welcome, caller. Welcome to Ask. Please ask your question.
Hello. Is that Mina? Hello?
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 Hello, Mina?
I think it dropped out. So moving on to
Mina,
our next question. Where is the best place to sit to avoid the whole turbulence?
So the best place to sit on an airplane is actually right on top of the wings for turbulence. And that's only because the wing is where the center of gravity of the aircraft is. So if you're right on the center of gravity, you don't get the vertical movement that happens with the turbulence, whether we're at the front or at the back. So you're always sort of there. I mean, it does shake, but you're not, the effect isn't exaggerated as you would be on the extremes of the aircraft. However, for comfort, for noise and whatnot, and the convenience, it's always better to sit at the front.
Yeah.
Hence, first class is at the front. So,
yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know if you remember, but when we were, funny story, maybe our viewers will enjoy this one. When we were on the flight to LA, when we were coming from Vegas to LA, it was a 4-hour flight. And I had this lady sitting next to me. Mind you, you were in 4 rows in front of me. And there was this lady who was the first timer to travel on the aeroplane. American lady. She seemed like she's from the countryside, and at that time I probably experienced the most turbulence I've ever experienced on all my travels. And she was really nervous, and her husband was very nervous also. I remember I turned around and started speaking to her, and I told her, "See my friend over there," and I pointed at you. And I said, my friend, he's an aeronautical engineer. So if he panics, you panic. And the whole time she was, after I told her that, I go, don't worry, he's sitting calmly. He's not panicking. You shouldn't worry. You shouldn't panic.
Yeah.
The whole time she was watching you.
If you had told me that then, I would have panicked just on purpose.
But she
no.
felt more reassured, and the rest of the flight, she was okay, and her husband were okay and more settled. But their eyes were just on you the whole time. I'm not sure if you remember this.
I mean, you told me the story, but no.
Yeah.
Had I known then, I would have had a bit of fun. But
yeah, so it was interesting.
Planes are safe. Planes are very, very safe. Turbulence is part of, unfortunately, a flight. It's nothing to be afraid of.
Okay. All right, now let's talk about something even more scarier than turbulence. Lightning. So what happens when a lightning hits the plane?
Generally nothing. It's a non-event for an aircraft. It looks and sounds scary. It might feel a bit scary if you're on board, but planes are designed to discharge any lightning strike. And you often see on the very ends of the wings or the wingtips, they're called discharge wicks, and they're just rods that stick out the back of the wing. And the airplane systems, the electronics, are insulated enough, and the airplane is designed to any lightning strike gets redirected to the wings and out the discharge rods. So it's very safe.
So a person flying in the plane would never realise that they went through lightning?
They would. They might hear it.
But not feel it?
Yeah, they might hear it, see it. They definitely won't get zapped or any of that stuff. They'll see, obviously, they might even see the static leaving the aircraft if they look out the wings, but they're designed for it. So.
Wow, that's very interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, so we got one final question for tonight's show. Unless a viewer sends in the question, we always give them priority. So our final question for the show, and this is for the people who have the fear of flying, what advice would you give them to help them overcome this fear?
Pretty much that, just trust you're in safe hands. The people flying the airplane have spent most of their life training and getting to where they are. They're very well experienced, they're capable. Certainly pilots have to live or get tested to the highest standards. The whole fatigue management, the whole training requirements, the constant training. You're in safe hands. It's just the fear of the unknown. You know, everyone knows how a car works. Everyone has been in a car 100 times or even more. But until you get constantly flying, you get acclimatized to what's happening. You've just got to trust the professionals. They're there to do a job, and you're in safe hands.
Yeah. And like I said at the intro of the show, it is said in the Bible 365 times, do not fear.
Yeah.
So I'd like to thank you for coming on tonight's show, and it was great having your insight. There were a lot of interesting things that I did not know, and thank you for sharing your insight with us.
Thank you for having me, Mina.
It's a pleasure having you.
Thank you.
And thank you to our audience for tuning into tonight's show. I hope you were entertained, and I hope your questions that you wanted asked answered for you on tonight's show. I'm Mina Ibrahim from your CYC studios in Sydney. Good night and God bless.